destruction to the races of the world.
What's up everyone, my name is Mike, and welcome to another GameCast Rewind. Today I'll be taking a look at Torchlight II and the SynergiesMOD for PC. Enjoy!
Deep beneath Torchlight, a darkness gathered. 3 heroes confronted the beast called Ordrak. Yet even in death, Ordrak's corrupted heart endured.
Before the original Torchlight, I had a passing interest in the action RPG genre. At the time, I had played Diablo and Diablo II, but never beat either. Torchlight was the first action RPG I actually completed. Something about it just got me hooked, and I plowed through it in about 2 days. After that, I explored more games in the genre, and so far I've only beaten the original Diablo and Diablo III. Developed and published by Runic Games, Torchlight II was released for PC in September 2012. And unlike the original game, this never made it to console. This review will also cover the SynergiesMOD, which is best described as a complete overhaul that includes rebalanced gameplay and tons of new content. I played the Steam version of the game and downloaded the Steam Workshop version of the SynergiesMOD, but you can also download the mod from ModDB. I know development of the original Torchlight was led by some of the guys who were behind the original Diablo and Diablo II, and in many ways the evolution of Torchlight to Torchlight 2 kind of mirrors Diablo's evolution to Diablo 2. So let's take a look at Torchlight 2 and see if the changes are for the better. Just like other action RPGs, Torchlight 2 is played from the isometric perspective. You run around completing quests and slaying monsters to obtain loot, experience, and level up your character. When you fire up the game for the first time, you'll need to create your character, and there's 4 classes to choose from: Outlander, Engineer, Ember Mage, and Berserker. The Outlander specializes in ranged weapons and some magic. The Engineer is a melee fighter that specializes in wielding heavy weapons and can construct bots that will assist in combat. The Berserker is another melee fighter class that uses fist-type weapons and can summon spirit animals. The Ember Mage is an elemental spellcaster, or in other words, the magic character class. The SynergiesMOD adds in several new classes, including the Warlock, which is a magic-based character class, the Ranger, which is kind of a ranged character class that can also dual-wield one-handed weapons and can use nature-based magic skills, the Necromancer specializes in raising the undead, and as of this review, the Paladin looks like a melee class, but the mod indicates the class is still in the alpha stage. For my playthrough of the original game, I chose the Engineer, and I played as a Ranger for my Synergies playthrough. After deciding on a class, you can choose your character's face, hair, and hair color, and then you get to select a pet that will aid you in combat. The pets are normally animals or other various creatures if you're playing the SynergiesMOD, and the vanilla game even includes a head crab from the Half-Life series. Not only do pets help you fight enemies, but they can also store items, learn spells or tomes, and be sent back to town to sell off items and even purchase items like potions from vendors to bring back to you. This is one of my favorite features of the series because it means you don't have to go back to town every time your inventory fills up. However, you can always use a waypoint scroll to open a portal back to town. After creating your character and choosing your pet, you can select the difficulty, of which there are 4: Casual, Normal, Veteran, and Elite. You also have the option to enable Hardcore mode, which means permadeath, as in if you die it's game over, you have to start all over again. I read that the SynergiesMOD is balanced around the Veteran and Elite difficulties, although the loading screens indicate it's just the Elite difficulty. Regardless, I played through most of it on Veteran, and it proved to be quite the challenge. If you've played any other action RPG, or at least Diablo 2, then Torchlight 2 should feel quite familiar. Each act normally contains a hub world complete with NPCs that offer you quests, vendors, and even a fishing hole. There's also fishing holes scattered throughout the environments, and not only can you catch fish from these holes, but also gear. Feeding your pet any caught fish will transform them into different creatures for a brief time. After obtaining a quest, then it's time to head to the overland areas. On your HUD is a mini-map that can be enlarged, and different parts of the map are revealed as you discover new areas. On the map are stars which identify the location of quest objectives, so you never have to worry about getting lost. Each act has a different aesthetic, which helps keep the game visually interesting all the way through. The first act takes you through mountainous grass and snowy regions, the second act takes you through a desert-like region, and the third act takes you through a haunted forest. The final act is the shortest and takes you through the broken mines. Each area is full of monsters, dead bodies, and objects that can be destroyed like urns and crates. You'll also have to watch out for hazards like mimic chests or other chests that contain traps. Maybe fire is shooting up from the ground, blades in the floor can rip you to shreds. You'll even have to watch out for explosive mines. In each of the overland areas is normally a waypoint portal that takes you back to town, as well as monsters, NPCs, and various what I'll call dungeons. Any quest that's not a story quest is a side quest, and I think my favorite is the one that takes you to Plunder Cove. It's a small area complete with undead pirate skeletons, crabs, and even ghosts. I would love to see a game or mod with this aesthetic alone. Anyway, all quests basically play out the same. You're always sent to slay a monster or multiple, retrieve something, activate something, or maybe complete a challenge. Sometimes you'll come across NPCs that can be rescued, and you will be rewarded for doing so. All areas normally have one monster that reveals a phase portal when killed. These portals take you to small areas that require you to complete a specific challenge, like slaying a tough monster, digging for buried treasure, surviving in an arena, or even staying close to the totems in order for them to fully rise while you're being assaulted by enemies in every direction. Completing phase portals normally rewards you with plenty of goodies. In addition to phase portals are Netherrealm portals that can be found throughout the environments. These take you to Netherrealm dungeons and are optional, but I would recommend completing every dungeon and quest you come across just so you can maintain the appropriate level for the threats ahead. All dungeons and areas are randomly generated, so you'll always have a unique experience each time you play. Dungeons normally consist of one or multiple floors and a boss at the end. Killing the boss of a dungeon enables you to open a boss chest where you have a higher chance of obtaining powerful gear. Some dungeons contain secret rooms which normally house treasures and gear, so you'll want to explore every nook and cranny. What makes Torchlight 2 so much fun is building your character. You earn experience for killing monsters and completing quests. Whenever you complete a quest, you not only receive experience, but usually money and a reward, which is usually weapons, armor, or even stuff for your pet like tags and collars. Some gear is unidentified, which means you don't know what its attributes are, and you can't equip it until you identify it. You can acquire identify scrolls for this. It should be noted that when you gain a level, any unidentified gear you're carrying is automatically identified. You can equip your character with head and chest armor, different types of pants or leg armor, boots and shoes, rings, and a necklace, and your pet can be equipped with 2 tags and a collar. You can equip 2 weapons and switch between them at any time. Every now and then you may acquire augmented gear like a weapon. This means it can be upgraded with better stats and attributes, usually by killing a specific amount of enemies with it. Not only will you come across gear like weapons and armor, but you'll also come across spells that you can learn, whether they be dropped by fallen enemies or purchased from vendors. The offensive and defensive spells drain mana, but some spells are passive as in always active, like Armor Expertise, which improves armor absorption, or the Barter spell, which reduces the purchase prices at vendors and increases the sale prices of your own goods. Many spells come in different ranks, and the higher ranking ones are more efficient, so it's always a good idea to upgrade when you can. You and your pet can learn up to 4 spells, and you can always forget a spell at any time. Some gear cannot be equipped until you reach the appropriate level or have high enough stats. Each piece of gear, whether it be weapons or armor, normally have unique attributes. For example, a piece of armor may raise one of your stats as long as you have it equipped. A weapon may inflict bonus damage, elemental damage, or even leech a specific amount of health with each strike. It's things like this that always keep you on the lookout for new and better gear. There's all types of different armor types and weapons like swords, maces, bows, guns, axes, staffs, and even polearms among others. I know the SynergiesMOD includes new weapons like throwable axes and knives, for example. On your journey, you'll come across colored gear, which means they have special magical properties that make them extremely powerful as well as valuable. Green items are enchanted, blue items are rare, gold items are unique, and purple items are part of a set. If you're lucky, you may acquire the Vendor Boon Scroll, which unlocks a special vendor that specifically sells set equipment. There's multiple armor sets in the game, and wearing multiple pieces of the same set normally grants you extra bonus properties. Gear and even money can be acquired from fallen enemies, from chests found throughout the environments, and gear can also be purchased from vendors. You can sell your old gear or even store it in your stash in town for later. Each town also has a shared stash box, which allows you to share your gear across multiple characters. The SynergiesMOD rebalances the existing gear system. For example, green and blue items have better affix rates, two-handed and dual-wielding weapons have better bonuses, monsters spawn more gear in general, and things like that. Some gear includes slots that allow you to socket gems into. There's all different kinds of gem types, or what the game calls Ember Specs. There's also unique gems called Chaos Ember Specs that can contain all kinds of different random properties. The basic ones are elemental. For example, if you socket a fire gem into a piece of armor, you'll have better fire resistance. Socket a poison gem into a weapon, and that weapon will do poison damage. There's 4 elemental types: fire, ice, electric, and poison. Some enemies specialize in elemental attacks and magic, so you'll always want to be sure you have the appropriate resistances. It's always good to have a balance of different elemental attributes, whether it be offensive or defensive. There's 2 specific vendors, the Gem Saver and Gem Smasher, that can be utilized if you don't want to get rid of a weapon or gem. The Gem Saver will destroy weapons but save the gems inside. The Gem Smasher will destroy the gems inside but save the weapons. Other vendors include a blacksmith that sells weapons and armor, a general goods vendor where you can buy potions and scrolls, a vendor who sells unidentified items, meaning you have no idea what the attributes for an item is until you buy it, and even a vendor that sells unique but expensive items. skills. The Enchanter enables you to enchant gear to make it more powerful. Finally, there's the Transmuter, who allows you to combine certain items into new items. The Synergies mod allows for a lot more transmuting recipes, and I mean a lot. You can combine potions to create better potions, gems to create better gems, gem upgrades. You can even combine souls and soul stones. It's crazy. I should mention you need to reach level 100 to do anything with souls, so you will have some grinding to do. Some vendors are unlocked as you progress or complete specific quests, and they normally become available in town. The Synergies mod adds new vendors to the roster, and they seem to be most beneficial for the endgame content. One of these new vendors sells specific Synergies mod items, like the new Potion Catalyst item, a scroll that opens a portal to Table Mountain, which is specifically meant for endgame grinding, and a scroll that opens a portal to the War Camp, which is for PvP content. Another new vendor is the Trainer that sells dummy scrolls that are used to summon dummies, even a mimic chest for training purposes, and I have no idea how to use these. Now, some vendors in both Vanilla and Synergies are found throughout the environments, and they're normally variants of the vendors you would find in town. For example, you can always bring a piece of gear to the Enchanter in town, and he'll enchant it, giving it special properties, but you may come across a specialized Enchanter in a dungeon, like one that enchants gear with ice properties, or even one that adds new sockets to gear. That one in particular is very useful. You're always going to come across something new in Torchlight II, and it's just one of the many reasons this game can be so addictive.
Fortune smiles upon you.
Now, there's more to building your character than just equipping the right gear. After you earn enough experience, you will level up, and every time you level up, you're granted 5 stat points that can be applied to strength, dexterity, focus, or vitality. You're also provided 1 skill point that can be applied to various skills across 3 skill trees, and each character, including the new ones introduced in Synergies, have their own unique skill trees. Each character class is unique, and you can create different builds by distributing points into different stats and focusing on specific skills. In addition to experience is fame. Killing unique, elite, and boss monsters rewards you with fame. Once you earn enough fame, you automatically earn a skill point. Some skills need to be unlocked, usually by reaching a certain level, and I would say that it's more beneficial to focus on a few skills rather than pouring points into every skill available. Some skills are passive, meaning they're always active, but most skills are offensive type moves, at least when talking about the character classes I chose, and every time you use one of these skills, you drain mana, and your mana can be restored by drinking mana potions. Every time you apply a point into a skill, that skill ranks up and becomes more powerful. Most of the skills can rank up and reach up to 3 tiers, and each tier grants that skill more powerful bonuses. You have plenty of options when it comes to building your character, and with the combination of stats, skills, and gear, the possibilities are essentially endless. The combat and gameplay overall in Torchlight II is pretty straightforward. Like most games in this genre, you really have to enjoy clicking shit because that's what it's all about. You click somewhere to move your character to that location, click items to grab them, click NPCs to talk to them, and click monsters to attack them. You can hold a button down to keep your character stationary, allowing you to attack in any direction without moving. On the bottom of your HUD is the action bar where you can place different skills, spells, and/or potions. Health potions restore health, and mana potions restore mana. The Synergies mod adds in new potions like elemental resistance potions, and you can even acquire a potion catalyst that will transmute health and mana potions into a rejuvenation potion when taken to a transmuter. You can click any of the icons along the action bar to activate their effects, but these are actually quick slots assigned to the number keys on your keyboard. Pressing one of the number keys will activate whatever is in the appropriate slot. I think those that don't like this genre don't enjoy the click fest because the majority of your actions involve the mouse. I would say these games are more about character building and loot than anything else. Now you're going to come across all kinds of monsters like werewolves, zombies, skeletons, large insects, ghosts, golems, goblins, and all other kinds of fantasy type creatures. The monsters usually attack you head on, some have ranged weapons or attacks, some pounce, some can even teleport around, and most of the time you're going to be swarmed and outnumbered. The Synergies mod seems to increase the monster count in general. One of the downsides of this is trying to escape a mob. Sometimes monsters just fill the area and you just can't find an empty space somewhere in the distance to click on so you can escape, which does become annoying. Furthermore, there's an increase in the amount of elite and unique enemy types, a significant increase. There's actually different types of elite enemies. You've got your actual elite enemies identified as such, the Synergies mod adds in hero enemies, and of course the boss monsters. For the sake of discussion, I'm just going to refer to all of these as elite monsters. Now in Synergies, you'll be running into elites like every 2 feet. It's a little ridiculous. Elite monsters normally drop better gear in general, but they're also damage sponges, so having to deal with so many many makes traversing through locations take a lot longer than if you were to traverse them in the vanilla game. On top of that, some elite enemies are just way overpowered, especially late in the game, and having to deal with multiple at a time all the time gets extremely tiresome. Look at this fight here, for example. I'm up against 3 elite enemies, all of which can significantly drain my health with just one attack. I'm well above their level, I have decent gear and stats, and yet they can destroy my shit in just 1 or 2 attacks. It's absolute madness. What's funny is there's actually 2 or 3 more elites just 5 feet away. I was just afraid to run away into new areas at the risk of attracting more elite enemies, and you get into battles like this all the time. You'll soon realize that any new location you discover, whether it be in the overland areas, inside a dungeon, or just around a corner, there's always going to be an elite enemy. Always. In the vanilla game, they don't appear nearly as often, making them feel a bit special when you do encounter them, but in Synergies, you start to dread progressing because you know there's going to be some overpowered elite around the next corner, in addition to the standard swarm of basic enemies. Some of these tougher elite monsters like to cast magic attacks that trap you so you can't move, and if you're surrounded by several elites, it's basically a death sentence. Elite monsters can also split into more elite monsters upon getting killed. In addition to all of this, there's quite a few monsters that spawn other monsters. I noticed that every act introduces an annoying monster that is not only a damage sponge, but also likes spawning other monsters frequently. Every single act has a monster like this. Every single one. And I'm not even talking about just elites, no, I'm talking about standard enemies, but of course there are elite variants of these monsters as well. The Dune Mothers in particular are the fucking worst. They spawn numerous Dune burrowers, and these little shits love to rush and swarm you. If you're up against multiple Dune Mothers, it's pure tedious hell. At the end of the 3rd act, I got into an insane battle with enemies and elites everywhere, and it got to the point where I just had enough. So I enabled the console and lowered the difficulty down to normal. With that said, on normal, basic enemies would barely do any damage, and I kinda felt overpowered. But ultimately, I was having a bit more fun. The difference in actual challenge between normal and veteran is quite noticeable. On normal, you'll cut through most monsters like butter, but on veteran, they can destroy you in seconds. I should mention that beating the campaign in the vanilla game took me about 13 hours. From my playthrough of the Synergies mod, I clocked in at about 28 hours before lowering the difficulty to normal. Yeah, that should give you an indication of how long it can take to get through Synergies on veteran. I want to say that I don't dislike the Synergies mod, in fact I love it. It expands the game in so many cool ways. However, I do think it needs more balancing, at least for solo players. The overwhelming hordes and amount of elite monsters can really bring down the pacing, making progress feel slow. Considering the amount of experience and fame have both been rebalanced to reflect all of the other changes, progression in general feels a bit slower. For example, it may take you an hour to kill every monster in one of the large overland areas in the vanilla game, but it can take up to 4 hours to do it in the Synergies mod, and that's no joke. It took me about 3 or 4 hours to get through the Ossian Wastes. I saw an add-on for the mod in the Steam Workshop that lowers the monster count, making it closer to the vanilla count. I installed this in an attempt to make progress a little faster, although there still seemed to be an overwhelming amount. With so many enemies spawning other enemies or enemies splitting upon death, the monster count still ended up being higher than normal. It feels like almost every other monster is splitting into multiple, or you're just getting swarmed all the time, and it almost feels like Synergies is balanced for more cooperative play than solo. After a while, the constant monsters spawning other monsters and monsters splitting becomes tedious, making encounters slogs to get through. I think it would be better if you could farm for experience, but monsters don't respawn in previous areas, so you always have to push forward. That's why completing every quest is important. You need to make sure you don't miss out on experience. Although in Synergies you can farm the Ember Steps, which I'll get to in a little bit. If you do install that add-on, you may want to install the Skills Unlock one as well, which adjusts the skill unlock rate accordingly. Another standout add-on is High Loot, which causes elite monsters to drop more loot upon getting killed. In both Vanilla and Synergy, some monsters carry a shield that must be broken before they can start taking any significant damage from your attacks, and the elite and boss enemies can take more of a beating than the standard enemy types. They also yield the best rewards upon getting killed. This game does support cooperative play through LAN or online, so having buddies to help you may be beneficial, and if you prefer to play solo, you can always rely on your pet to help you. Your pet will always aid you in combat, and you can set your pet to be passive, aggressive, or defensive. Your pet has health and mana bars, both of which can be restored by using the appropriate potions, and if your pet loses all of its health, it will flee. Its health will regenerate, and it will return to you, but you can always use a health potion to heal it faster. If you do die, you're provided multiple options for respawning. The closer you spawn to where you died, the more gold you'll lose. I found that money doesn't really become an issue, as long as you're careful with it, so spawning where you died is usually not that big of a deal, but the game does get harder the further you progress, and if you don't have the right gear equipped, things can get really tough.
I'm badly wounded.
Action RPGs aren't just about combat and decimating hordes of enemies. I mean, that's all good fun, but I would say the genre's biggest draw is character building. If you enjoy building characters, this may just be the genre for you. After completing the storyline, there's a good amount of endgame content which enables you to continue leveling up your character, acquire better gear, and basically provide you with an infinite amount of replay value. And that's in addition to the multiplayer. With that said, the vanilla game offers two ways to continue playing after completing the story. You can proceed to start what is essentially the New Game Plus mode, where you complete the story again but retain your current stats and equipment, or you can visit the Mapworks. The Mapworks is like a separate little hub world where you can buy maps that are randomly generated and fight your way through them. Each map is basically a dungeon with a theme based on locations in the story and normally consists of multiple floors ending with a boss fight. I should also mention that the maps do come with special properties. Some maps grant benefits to the player, monsters, or both. For example, the map may offer you a damage bonus, increased gold, or maybe your movement speed and damage are reduced. The special properties can really mix things up, making for interesting dungeon crawling experiences. There's plenty of maps to purchase, and new ones are always being stocked, so you can basically keep playing forever. It's obvious that these maps are literally designed for you to keep grinding through enemies in an effort to level up and acquire rare loot and gear. And I love it. If you truly enjoy these types of games and can easily get addicted to character building, the Mapworks should be right up your alley. Some of the loading screens in the Synergies mod make it very clear that the mod is not balanced for New Game Plus. However, there's all kinds of new endgame content that make the vanilla Mapworks look shallow in comparison. You'll notice in towns there's a portal to the Ember Steps. I believe you can check this out at any time, but I decided to investigate it after I beat the main story. When you enter the portal, you're brought to a new hub world or town, complete with NPCs and vendors and spots for soul crafting. As I stated before, you need to be level 100 before you can do anything with souls, but I do know the souls can be used to craft mythical armor. You can leave the Ember Steps to enter the Realm of Discord, which I guess is a new overland area. And of course, as soon as I entered, I was greeted by 3 or 4 elite enemies. Big surprise. Some monsters reveal phase portals upon getting killed. In fact, there seems to be a lot of enemies that do this. Phase portals everywhere. Even when you're in a phase portal, you can kill 3 or 4 enemies that unleash their own phase portals. So it looks like the phase portals just take you to different areas in the Realm of Discord. It should also be noted that the Realm of Discord areas seem to repopulate monsters every time you leave and come back. The enemies here drop a lot of great loot, some of which is exclusive to the Synergies mod. You'll acquire a lot of unique and unidentified items, and the mod expands your inventory storage space with multiple pages, so there's plenty of room to store everything. After getting a better understanding of how the Ember Steps worked, I really started enjoying it a lot more. I had no idea what the hell was going on because I would click on phase portals accidentally because I guess I clicked too fast and the monsters will unleash these portals instantly upon getting killed. I would immediately be transported to a new location, and this happened often, so I was constantly moving around just slaying hordes of enemies in new and interesting places, trying to complete quests without actually knowing where the hell I was going, but I was leveling up my character and acquiring rare and useful gear more often than not, so the Ember Step stuff can really become quite addictive. Yeah, it's awesome. After realizing that the Ember Steps is designed specifically for leveling your character, you could theoretically just bypass the entire story mode and immediately jump into the Ember Steps. There are quests to complete in the Realm of Discord, so there's always a goal to work towards, but I suppose you could just grind through the areas and level up however you want. The Synergies mod real endgame stuff is at Table Mountain. After you buy the Table Mountain scroll, you can teleport to the mountain, which is another little town complete with every vendor you've come across in the game. All of the different enchanter types, Gem Smasher, Gem Saver, the General Goods Merchant, and even Synergies exclusive vendors that sell mod exclusive items. From Table Mountain, you can of course visit various locations to slay monsters for more gear to better equip your character. The mod makes it clear that Table Mountain is not designed for leveling and expects you to be at level 100, which is the level cap. Table Mountain includes an entrance to a special location called the Deserted Gold Mine, which seems to be specifically designed for you to acquire a shit ton of gold. There's several custom dungeons designed for players who have reached the level cap. I believe these are considered raid dungeons, and they contain exclusive synergy bosses and legendary equipment. These dungeons require you to reach a specific tier, and I'm not exactly sure what that means since you can't level past 100. I'm assuming it means you need to have specific and powerful gear to enter these areas. To really get to the meat of Table Mountain, you need to reach the level cap. I found that playing through the story should get you to about level 50 or so. So yeah, you'll want to spend some time in the Ember Steps. But you also have the option to buy clockwork maps, which take you to the Clockwork Zone. Synergies offers numerous ways to level up, and it's all great fun as long as you enjoy grinding.
The alchemist hastens to the clockwork core and carries with him Ordrock's heart.
The story takes place years after the events of the original Torchlight. Apparently, the alchemist, who was a playable character in the first game, has become corrupted by the Ember Blight coming from the heart of Ordrock, who was the original game's antagonist. The alchemist then destroys the town of Torchlight and plans to use Ordrock's power to disrupt the balance between the world's 6 elements. I'm going to be honest, I had to look up a plot summary because the story just isn't interesting. I knew the alchemist was the bad guy and that's about it. Actually, the plot is very similar to Diablo II's plot. Both games include a character from the original that became the antagonist. The story plays out through acts, and in between each act is normally an animated cutscene. The cutscenes themselves are okay, but I do kind of wish there was more of them because it's very tempting to skip the dialogue boxes when interacting with NPCs. With that said, the voice work is nothing special, and it seems that only the story quests contain voice-acted dialogue. The story is clearly just a backdrop for the gameplay, which thankfully is addictive and fun from beginning to end. One of the things I love about the Torchlight games is their art style. Torchlight 2 uses the same cartoony art style as the original game, and I absolutely love it. Everything has kind of a chunky look and feel to it, there's a good amount of color, and it's just very pleasing on the eyes. One of the most satisfying things about this game is watching enemies explode into bloody chunks. Whenever you have the opportunity to wipe out multiple enemies at a time, you may be able to cover the ground in jibs. As for the audio work, it's what you would expect. Weapons make the appropriate sounds, enemies will roar, scream, moan, and growl, and make other typical noises fantasy creatures would probably make. The music actually reminds me a lot of the music from Diablo II. It seems to have many similar motifs. But honestly, I kind of just tuned it out after a while since none of the songs sounded that memorable to me. When talking about the performance, the vanilla game ran fine. As for the SynergiesMOD, well, let's take a look at this battle here. Yeah, when there's a lot of shit on screen, which does happen often in this mod, the frame rate tanks big time. And I have a PC with specs that are way above and beyond the specs required for this game. So not only can the onslaught of constant hordes of monsters really slow your progress through the campaign, it literally hinders the performance.
You can throw that piece of junk away. It's just a lamp with a pretentious name. It doesn't actually do anything.
I absolutely love Torchlight 2 and think it's one of the best action RPGs out there. It's got plenty of depth, plenty of options when it comes to character builds, and has addictive gameplay. It released a little while after Diablo 3, and I remember playing this much more at the time. Diablo 3 had some serious issues with gear drops and the horrible focus on the auction house at launch. Although when Diablo 3's Loot 2.0 patch released, I started playing that more. But Torchlight 2 is still a great game. It may not receive the constant updates and new content like Blizzard does with their games, but it does have mod support, and the modding community is quite impressive. The SynergiesMOD is one of the best mods you can install for this game, and as of this review, it receives relatively frequent updates. It includes rebalanced gameplay, new monsters, soul crafting, new gems, stat potions, and all other kinds of new additions and little tweaks that give you all kinds of reasons to return. However, I do think the difficulty needs a bit more balancing, at least when talking about the story mode. According to the game, the mod is balanced for the elite difficulty, which is interesting. I'd like to know the creator's definition of balance because I played through most of it on veteran and it just becomes frustrating. Maybe it's more balanced for multiple players on elite, but certainly not for a solo playthrough. If you're going to play through Synergy solo, I'd highly recommend you play through it on normal, at least at first. Now, it's possible that by the time this review is released, the mod may be updated to address some issues and fix the balancing. Overall, the SynergiesMOD is a fantastic piece of work that just needs some more tuning. It feels like Torchlight 2 kind of came and went, and it's definitely been overshadowed and buried by other action RPGs that have hit the market in more recent times. Games like Path of Exile and Grim Dawn are good examples, but there's something special about Torchlight 2. I love the art style, the gameplay, and the developers truly nailed the loot system, making the game extremely addictive and fun to play. Torchlight 2 is one of my favorite games in the genre, and I would highly recommend it to any fans of the genre or those looking to get into it for the first time. I actually think Torchlight 2 and its predecessor are great for newcomers. The storylines are shit, but I think these types of games are more about character building than anything else. Torchlight 2 has plenty of depth and options when it comes to character builds while managing to be relatively simple to understand. It may not have as much depth as games such as Path of Exile or Grim Dawn, or be treated as a service and receive constant updates such as Diablo 3, but it does have mod support, and that alone could keep the game fresh forever. The developer Runic Games was a subsidiary of Perfect World, and I guess the powers that be decided that Runic had to shut down in November 2017. It truly makes me sad to think we may never get a Torchlight 3 or any other game from them for that matter. The original Torchlight was the first game in the genre I actually completed, and it basically got me into the genre. Evidently, the reason they were shut down was so Perfect World could focus on games as a service. Yeah, fuck them. But Torchlight 2 is still readily available, at least on Steam and GOG, and I would definitely recommend you check it out if you haven't already. Thanks for tuning in. I hope this video proved helpful. Stick with GameCast for more quality content, including the latest gaming news, podcasts, let's plays, and even more reviews. Be sure to check out my channel, Gaming Pastime, for new game reviews released every week. My name is Mike, and I thank you for watching.
Heroes may fall, hope may fade, but new heroes will arise.